Anytime we are 100% sure of something, that's a sign that our minds are lying to us.
That's today's guest, educator, author, and mind-shifting coach Mitchell Weisburgh, challenging the certainty we all bring into our classrooms and rehearsals. Welcome to Music Ed Insights. I'm leadership trainer and former band director Alan Fire, here with composer and co-college music education program head Steve Shanley.
Each episode, Alan and I talk with national thought leaders in music education with practical insights for K-12 music educators.
Steve, tell us about our guest.
Mitch Weisburgh has spent decades helping educators and organizations rethink how people learn, lead, and work together. He's the creator of the MindShifting framework, which centers on 3 learnable capacities: being resourceful when our brains are lying to us, resilient when things don't go as planned, and collaborative even when there's conflict or disagreement. Mitch works with schools, districts, and nonprofits to help adults and students alike self-regulate, navigate pressure, and shift from defensiveness to curiosity. Find Mitch's full bio, show notes, and resources at musicedinsights.com. Alan, what was the takeaway you had from this episode?
Well, I loved Mitch's claim that being 100% certain is actually a red flag, that our survival brain has taken over. And his perhaps I can strategies, where we help students answer their own I can't with a quiet internal perhaps I can, reframes how we think about motivation and mindset in rehearsal. A simple move, but it can build confidence. How about you?
I mentioned this in the interview, but I love it when our non-music teacher guests remind us just how awesome music is. I think we can forget that sometimes. He reminded us we can use music to flush out those stress hormones, especially when we might have to engage in a difficult conversation with a colleague or administrator.
Yeah. And his reminder about the power of silence, those 5 to 10 seconds after we ask a student a tough question, that really landed for me. Give students a space to think, remember, and choose a next step. Try that tiny shift sometime. Insiders get ad-free episodes. Learn more at our website. But for now, let's get to Mitch Weisburgh.
Mitch Weisburgh, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, Steve and Alan, for having me on the program, and looking forward to a spirited discussion.
Well, let's dive right in. What does your mind-shifting framework entail?
So my mission is to help people learn how to be resourceful, resilient, and collaborative. And so those are the 3 elements of what I call mind shifting, which is, kind of a made up word. But the resourcefulness is about how to recognize when our own brains are misleading us and basically lying to us and preventing us from doing the things that we most want to do. And so to be able to take a step back and to be more resourceful. Resilience is the ability to go into situations pretty much already knowing that the first thing that we're going to do is not going to completely solve the situation. Okay, like you don't learn how to play a musical instrument the first time you pick the instrument up. And so how do you go into situations knowing that the first thing you're going to be doing isn't going to completely solve it, but it's going to give you some feedback that you can then use to continue to move forward, and you can be resilient. You don't regard things as failure. And then the third part is that anything big that we expect to do, we're going to be doing with other people. And so how do you still move forward with other people, even when they disagree with you or compete with you, or you think they're trying to harm you, but you can't just roll over them? How do you still work with them so that you can move towards both of your goals? And so I think that if people learn the techniques, and these are all things that are learnable and teachable, and they don't come from me, they come from people who are a lot smarter than me. But if people learned how to use the techniques in order to be more resourceful, how to be more resilient, and they learned the techniques to be more collaborative, first of all, we'd all be living happier lives. And second of all, we'd actually start moving forward on all the problems that we face as, families, society, the world, and we start solving them rather than fighting about them.
So the 3 elements, could you just repeat those one more time, please?
Resourceful, resilient, collaborative.
And I feel like the second one, resilience, the last one, collaborative, our listeners are probably like, yep, totally get that. The first one, you said something that interested me about our brain or our mind lying to us. Could you talk a little bit more about that and maybe give an example, please?
Sure. So there are so many different cases, but one case is when we're sure we don't know how to do something. So if you're teaching a kid and you're teaching a kid music and you say, well, look, I want you to play this piece. And the kid immediately says, I'll never be able to do that. I can't do that. Well, you know that that child, through practice and breaking it down, you know they're going to be able to eventually do it. But in their mind, they can't. And as long as they think that they can't do it, they can't. And so you have to be able to somehow or other plant the seeds in their mind. Well, we do this with ourselves also. We think, I'll never be able to save up for retirement. I'll never be able to keep my job. I'll never be able to get married. I'll never be able to have a long-term relationship with somebody. That's just one of the ways our minds lie to us. One of the things that surprise people the most is pretty much anytime we are 100% sure of something, that's a sign that our minds are lying to us.
Yeah.
That our survival brain, our limbic system, has quickly made a decision and reacted to something and flooded our brain with stress hormones so that we don't have access to our own resourcefulness. And we're so sure of something that we're sure this other person is wrong. We're so sure we're right. We're so sure we can do something. We're so sure we can't do something. We're so sure this person is trying to harm us. Whenever we're thinking that way, it's really our survival brain trying to protect us by coming up with the one right thing to do. And that's basically a sign that says, something, this is my survival brain. This is my limbic system. Let me first calm myself down. How do I open myself up to other possibilities?
All right. I've got some action items for myself the rest of the day because I'm sure I will be 100% certain about at least one thing today.
Yep.
At
Me
least
too.
one. At least one.
Yeah. All right. So, what are the biggest implications for the mind shifting framework in terms of just music in general?
So when we're stuck in this survival or limbic mode, basically we think of that as reality. And so really the first step to being able to overcome that is awareness to say, oh my gosh, I'm in limbic mode, I'm in survival mode. But the second step is very often some type of distraction from the problem. So you're no longer thinking about the problem itself or the issue itself, so that your brain has a chance to flush out all those stress hormones that are flooding it. And music is really maybe even the best, but certainly one of the best ways to do that. Either playing music or listening to music, dancing to music, because you can't be upset and dancing, right? So when you're listening to music, you're no longer thinking about this big issue. Your stress hormones start moving down, and you can start saying, well, what else can I do? So to me, that is the biggest implication of music to the mind shifting framework.
Well, then it sounds like our listeners have a huge advantage on their hands because most of our listeners are music teachers. How do you think they might use this in their classrooms or with their students in particular?
So knowing that music is one of the best ways to help a person self-regulate, then that gives music teachers this tremendous argument about the importance of music in schools. And so as pressures come, oh, we got to do more test prep, we got to do more of this. It's like, well, wait a minute. If you really want the kids to do deep learning, they need a way to decompress. And music is one of the best ways to do that. So let's bring more music into their lives so that they're better able to self-regulate, so that other teachers, all of us, can help them co-regulate better. And another thing, it's just in terms of, how you use mind shifting with the students, let's just take the case where the student knows that they don't know how to do something. I'll never be able to play this instrument. I'll never be able to read this note. I'll never be able, whatever it is. If we try to confront that and say, yes, you can, or yes, you do have these abilities, or I'm sure you can, it just takes a little bit more practice. Essentially, the other person is reading that as we are judging them and we're contradicting them, whether it's a kid or another teacher, but in this case, it's a kid. So in mind shifting, you're learning other ways of approaching. One of the most powerful ones that we use is something called the perhaps I can. And the way you use the perhaps I can is you get the other person to say that to themselves. You said to the kid, well, perhaps you can, that might help. But if you can get the kid to say that to herself or himself,
Hmm.
then that's even more powerful. So the way the technique works is, as a teacher, you say to the child, "So you're pretty sure that you can't do this, then, right?" "Yeah, yeah, I know I can't." It's like, well, when you're sure that you can't do that, is it like you have this voice that's saying, "I can't do this"? Now you're kind of planting that idea into the kid's brain because it never would have occurred to them that there's a voice, okay? But you're saying, could it be that is it like you have this voice saying, "I can't do this"? And like 99 times out of 100, it's like, "Yeah, I got this voice and it feels like this." I said, "Well, why don't you try this? Think about doing whatever it is. Think about playing this instrument. Think about doing the song. When that voice says, 'I can't do it,' why don't you just respond to the voice? 'Perhaps I can.'" So let's try that. Think about doing it. You hear the voice that says, "I can't do this." Now just respond to yourself, "Perhaps I can." And then you go quiet for like 15 seconds. And you might have to count to 15 because your tendency is you want to talk, right? So you wait for, 10, 15 seconds and say, "Well, so what opened up for you?" And inevitably, again, like 8 times out of 10, the child's going to say, "Well, something, I thought, well, maybe I can't right now, but maybe I can in a week. Or maybe I can't right now, but with your help, maybe I can. Or maybe I can practice something simpler first." And so they always had the ability to come up with those things, but their mind was so closed by "I know I can't" that what you've just done is you've given them access to their own resourcefulness, which is a lot more powerful. Because if you had suggested, "Well, perhaps you can't right now, but maybe you can in a week," you're much more likely to trigger an argument.
One thing you said earlier kind of sparked a thought for me, and it's this idea that when a student, or I even think collectively, a band or a choir, we hand out a new piece of music or introduce a new concept, and their first reaction is, "I can't do this," or "we collectively as a band can't do this." And I bet every single person listening is thinking, yeah, and I want to tell them, you can. I know you can. I have faith in you. I know things you don't know about yourself. Like that's sort of the first thing that we jump to is, and we think it's great, the positive encouragement, and we show them that we believe in them. And until you had mentioned this, it hadn't occurred to me that, for some students, they might take it that way. Yes, Mr. Fire, he believes in me. He thinks I
Mhm.
can do this. And other folks, they might just be like, nah, you're a liar. I know what I can do, and I know I
Right.
can't do this.
Another technique is to ask the child, has there ever been a time where you're sure you couldn't do something and you persisted anyhow and you were able to do it? And when you can get them to start talking about those things, and then you kind of move towards, well, here's something that you're sure that you can do, but you were able to overcome things before. How do you think you might be able to overcome this? And you can get it with the whole group. Like, let's come up with a list of 4 or 5 things that we could all do, so that maybe in 2 or 3 weeks we look back on this and say, "Wow, we didn't think we could do it. Look how we succeeded."
So, those are a couple of great ideas for how music teachers could use this in their classrooms and with their students. I'm curious if you have ideas for how they might use the mind shifting framework as they interact with others, like other teachers, administrators, school board, the community, and so forth.
Well, in the conflict and collaboration, we spend a lot of times, exploring how our normal methods of communications trigger other people. And so, one of the first techniques to use is to figure out something positive that you can say to another person about themselves. Like, if you're doing this with a kid, it's like, "Wow, something, you said this, you're really demonstrating your independence by saying this, and I really appreciate that." Whatever it is, when somebody disagrees with you and you can turn it into a compliment, you're disarming them to a certain extent. And by disarming them, you're creating more of a rapport, more of a connection with that other person, so that you can start moving forward. And then the second part is to proceed with questions that show that you're interested in how they came to that decision, or what contributed to whatever it is that they said and what they really want to accomplish. So exploratory questions like, what is it that you really want to accomplish here? And how might there be other things that one could do that might accomplish, those goals? And could they possibly be even better? Can we come up with three alternatives? And so opening up questions. And then third is once you come to some agreement, very often we think that we've come to agreement with another person, but somehow or other they're not fully committed. So questions such as, well, it seems to me that we've talked about us doing or you doing X, on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is you're not going to do it, and 10 is you're sure you're going to do it and it's going to be successful. How do you feel about this? So that's like question one of this is one of two. Whatever number they say, as long as it isn't a 1, even if they say like a 3, you say, well, okay, so you said a 3. Why didn't you pick a lower number? And so when you ask them why they didn't pick a lower number, you're asking them to sell themselves on why they should do it. And the more they talk, the more committed they are to doing that. Now, if they chose a 1, that's basically telling you that they were never going to do this. And so you have to go back to something to come up with something that they're going to do. So it's giving you valuable feedback, but any other number but 1 gives you an opportunity to do that second part, which is why didn't you choose a lower number?
So my hunch is many of our listeners at some point in the next week are going to have some sort of disagreement or problem with a decision that one of their administrators made. First thing that you recommend they do as they enter into this would be what?
Well, the first thing that they should do is think about how they're feeling about this. Because if they're feeling upset, anxious, or angry, or something like that, then that's the signal that they're in their what I call scientists call the limbic mind, or the survival brain, or the lizard brain. And it could be that just realizing, oh my gosh, I was reacting from survival mode.
Mm-hmm.
It could be that that's enough. Okay. But if that doesn't calm them down, then something, if they can take a pause and say, like if they get it in an email or they get it somehow or other so that they don't have to, so they're not like facing the person right then, take 3 minutes and listen to some music, and just think about the music, and then start asking yourself, well, what do I want out of this situation? Now, if you're directly with that person, then you still, you can't say, well, maybe you can, but you probably can't say, well, wait a minute, you just said something really stupid, so I'm going to take a break now to get back to you. But maybe you can say, wow, something, let me think about that and let me get back to you in a couple of minutes, and that might give you some time to calm yourself down. Maybe you can, while they're talking, ask them some question or ask them something so that you can then divert your attention to something that's pleasant so that you can calm yourself down. And then you could also be asking yourself questions. Okay, this person just said this. In an ideal situation, what would I want to happen over the next week or two? Or what are three different things that I could say? And I think the number 3 is a world better than what are 2 different things. Because with 2 different things, we very often come up with one good thing and one really bad thing, and it's really clear which one we would do. But as soon as we're forced to come up with 3 things, we open up our minds to really other things that could actually be helpful. It could be more than 3, but 3 would be the smallest number of things that I would suggest you ask yourself.
Those are some great ideas. And also, every time we have someone on the program who is not a music teacher or not a performing musician, we're reminded, oh yeah, music is really cool. We sometimes
really
forget
is.
about that because it's our job. And when you say, music teachers, one thing you could do if your principal just sent you an email that angered you, you could listen to music. Like, we don't think about that. Oh, yes, that's right. I could do that. That would be very helpful.
And you all could do something that I can't do, is you could play music, which is
Yeah,
probably even better, right?
for sure. So what cool things have you been up to recently, Mitch?
So I think the coolest thing that I've been up to recently, which is not really directly related to mind shifting, but I started a class for, let's say, 10 to 12-year-olds in cooking. So I'm teaching 12 preteens cooking from
Wow.
5 p.m. to 8 p.m. every Wednesday. It's a free class. It's at our community resource center. And it is absolutely exhausting, but it is so, so cool. The kids get so excited. We're introducing them to food. I mean, I was shocked. Of the 12 kids who were in the class, not one of them had ever had mashed potatoes before, and they learned how to make mashed potatoes. Sometimes they're doing them in pairs, sometimes they're doing them in groups of four, and they're also learning some self efficacy, some at self advocacy. Like we made chocolate covered strawberries, so it's like, Mitch, how much sugar do we put in? I said, well, like the recipe says to put in 2 teaspoons, but why don't you try putting in 1 teaspoon, stir it up and taste it. And if you want some more sugar, put in more. Oh, can we do that? Yes, it's for you. You're going to be eating it. Do it the way you want to. And it's just that's to me, that's the coolest thing that I'm doing right now.
Awesome. All right. Can you stick around for some lightning round questions, please?
I can try.
All right. Our producer tells us you are in New York. What is your favorite restaurant in the New York area these days?
So the name of the restaurant just escapes me right now, but it's a pizza restaurant in New Rochelle. It's in this. It's like on a really back road. You'd never find it, and it's been a pizza restaurant for like 70 years, and it's got that background. Um, and I just forgot the name of the restaurant, so I'm really sorry, but it was just like such a cool experience.
All right. How about a favorite musical artist, a group, or a song you want more people to know about?
So last night we went to a concert. We saw the Greenwich Symphony Orchestra, which is a fantastic orchestra, and the piece after the intermission was Mussorgsky's Picture at an Exposition, which I've heard many times before, but this time he talked about it, and the conductor, and he was describing that this was originally a piano piece, and I had no idea. And so listening to that piece and hearing it as a piano piece and with the full orchestration was like you're listening it with two minds. That was one of the best musical experiences I've ever had.
All right. How about a favorite vacation destination?
Our favorite type of vacation is to go to an area by bicycle where they grow the grapes for winemaking. And so one of our favorite places is the Finger Lakes in New York. And in the Finger Lakes, it's rolling hills, and it's really not discovered by wine connoisseurs, but there's some great wine, and it's really inexpensive. So you're bicycling in this area that's drop dead gorgeous with these long Finger Lakes through vineyards, and every 20 minutes or half an hour you're stopping at a winery. You can go to 5 wineries in a day if you start early enough.
And how about the most memorable musical performance or concert you've attended?
So there was the one yesterday, but there was another. There's a I guess it's about a half an hour from here. Tarrytown has a tiny jazz club, and we've seen some incredible acts there. Every Sunday they have Brazilian music, so you go and you listen to Brazilian music, and they serve feijoada, and of course you can have caipirinhos while you're there. And I think my favorite time there was Tito Puente Jr., who's playing the old Tito Puente songs, and describing, how his dad composed them, how his dad played them, and he was just great entertainer. So we love going there. We probably go there once a month.
Nice. I'm not even going to make this subtle. I got to play with Tito Puente Jr. on his last
Wow.
tour. So, yeah, he came through Iowa. Not many piano players in Iowa can play that style of music. So I got the gig. It was pretty fun.
Wow. That's great. Yeah.
And finally, a book recommendation for our listeners, please.
I'm thinking Alice in Wonderland.
Hmm?
Now, people would not normally pick that as an adult book, but it is drop dead funny. And when you read it as an adult and you see like the mathematical logic behind the story, and it's just like you can't help but laugh. So I would recommend re-picking up a version of Through the Looking Glass and Alice in Wonderland as an adult to read it. And by the way, if you're around kids, you can read it out loud to the kids, and they're going to get it on a different one level, and you're going to get it on a whole different level.
Mitch Weisburgh, thank you so much for spending time with us today. Mindfulness is key to self-efficacy, and it's nice to hear you talk about resilience and resourcefulness in young people and grown-ups. So thanks a lot for swinging by.
Thanks for having me. And I didn't get a chance to say, but mindshiftingwithmitch.com, that's my website. If people want to find out more, you can just go there. They have a free newsletter that you can subscribe to where we give tips every week.
Thanks for listening to Music Ed Insights.
We're supported by Group Dynamic, a leading provider of youth leadership workshops. Alan works with dozens of schools each year to help develop their leaders. Learn more at groupdynamicyouth.com.
Or you could email me at alan@groupdynamic.net. Also sponsored by the Co-College Music Education Program. They've got a website too.
Just click their link at our website or email me at shanley@coe.edu.
Also, The Normal Design, helping normal companies and people create memorable, meaningful, and professional designs and branding. More at thenormaldesign.com.
And Winterset Websites, website design and maintenance. wintersetwebsites.com.
Our Facebook page is Music Ed Insights.
Our website has program notes, links, and a one-page download of this episode's key takeaways. That's on musicedinsights.com.
You can expect a new episode most Mondays during the school year.
Get current.
Stay relevant.
Music Ed Insights.